What's up, family? Welcome back to another legendary top of the movie reaction video. So we got Larry Elder here, man. We got Larry Elder, who basically how can I put it politely, destroyed the Breakfast Club. You know what I mean? So we got Larry Elder here, basically destroyed the Breakfast Club. Also put Charlemagne the God in check. So let's get it popping,
Welcome,
man.
brother.
Thank you so much for having me. It is an honor.
How you feeling?
I feel good.
He does more than that, though. I mean, he was a radio host.
Radio host for 40 years.
Author, TV host.
Author,
New York
host.
Times best-selling list. I've got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Corner of Hollywood and Vine, Southeast corner, just saying.
Okay.
I didn't know you had a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame,
Yeah,
man.
yeah, about a handful of radio guys do, and I'm one of them.
Yeah, I think it's you, Elvis Duran,
Angie
Howard
Martinez.
Stern,
Yeah.
Big Boy. Oh,
Art-
Angie.
Now, Larry Elder is running for president as a Republican candidate. I've seen a little bit of video. Very intelligent, very knowledgeable guy who backs himself up with statistics, facts, and data. Not just saying things and not being able to substantiate his argument. So, let's keep going, brother.
A guy named Arthur Godfrey.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's jump right into it. Why are you running for president?
Well, I'm running as an America First mega guy, and we have an America First mega guy running, obviously. So the question is, what do you bring to the table?
You said MAGA.
MAGA.
Okay.
And the answer is, I bring a lot of issues to the table that I feel our side is not talking enough about, if at all. For example, the #1 social problem in America, by far, is the epidemic not of COVID, but of fatherlessness. 70% of black kids today enter the world without a father in the home, married to the mother, up from 25% back in 1965. Now 25% of white kids enter the world today without a father in the home, married to the mother. And the stats are clear. Even Barack Obama once cited them. If you're raised without a dad, you're 5 times more likely to be poor and commit crime, 9 times more likely to drop out of school, and 20 times more likely to end up in jail. What's happened? In the mid-'60s, with I think the best of intentions, a Democrat named Lyndon Johnson launched what he called the War on Poverty. And since then, we have incentivized women to marry the government and incentivized men to abandon their financial and moral responsibility. You know, when I say this to people, the pushback I get is, well, there are lots of things that are going on, systemic racism, poverty. Here's the problem. If you look at a young black male aged 10 to 43, that's young to me because I'm 71 years old. A young black man in that demo is
71 years old, man. He looks very healthy. Look good to be 71 years old. Very knowledgeable. Seems like he takes very good care of himself, and also make sure he know what he's talking about and school himself on the things that he's talking about before he decides just to go ramble on to the things that he's going to stand for. And like I said, substantiate his argument, and he puts a lot of things in context so you have a better understanding, right?
13 times more likely to be murdered than a young white man, same demo. Young black man, real young, 19 and under, the #1 cause of preventable death is homicide, almost always at the hands of another young black male. Same demo for whites, the #1 cause of preventable death is unintentional deaths. That includes drug overdoses, automobile accidents, drownings. It's not until they get to #4 that death is the cause. In America, 60% of the shootings, the robberies, and the homicides are committed by black people, often against other black people. Of the homicides in this country, half of them are black victims, almost all killed by other blacks. How do you explain that if it isn't for the absence of fathers? Are you prepared to say black people are just genetically inclined to commit more crime? I doubt it. And the go-to reaction often is poverty and systemic racism. Here's the problem. 1940, when there was blatant racism, this is before Brown versus Board of Education, before the Civil Rights Act of '64, KKK was still alive and well, 87% of blacks lived under the poverty line. Now it's about 14%. You can't blame it on poverty. You can't blame it on racism. It is the breakdown of the nuclear intact family, and neither side is talking about it.
Key word. He said it's not about racism. You can't blame poverty, because back when real racism happened, 80% of people was in, blacks were in poverty. Now it's 40%. Key word, nuclear family. You see it? Let me run that back, family.
Blacks lived under the poverty line. Now it's about 14%.
14%. Sorry, family. Let me make sure I got my numbers
Fort Brown
right.
versus Board of Education before the Civil Rights Act of 64. KKK was still alive and well. 87% of blacks lived under the poverty line.
87%.
Now it's about 14%.
14 now.
You can't blame it on poverty. You can't blame it on racism. It is the breakdown of the nuclear intact family.
Breakdown of the nuclear intact family.
And neither side is talking about it. The left doesn't talk about it because they caused it with the welfare state, and our side is not.
No, I can agree. You know, the left caused it because now you have more women basically married to the welfare system. And they emphasize that and the importance of that and receiving support in that way as it being pranced around and being more of a advantage and being more of a upkeeping than actual families sticking together, working together for the best interest of their family to then build generational wealth and generational faith and you know, being able to leave a legacy for the family line and the family's name and the same and keeping the existence of the family legacy to exist. You know what I'm saying? In that sense. Now, so instead of upkeeping that, what is important to keep the livelihood and keeping the names alive of those in your family and generational wealth and generations to come after you and those putting in the work for generations to then benefit after them is more so, okay, I'd rather ditch being a family, the nuclear family, and being a family and doing anything by any means necessary to keep my family, to put the work in when times get hard, when things are hard, because you got to come down to realize that relationships aren't easy, you know. A lot of times we see Disney movies and fantasies where, you know, Beauty and the Beast and, you know, Princess and the Frog and, you know, all those fantasized movies that we tend to think relationships are fantasies and never go through real life issues. Cinderella, you know, so now in this word, so, okay, why deal with that? You know what I'm saying? Where basically I can stay sane. A woman feels though they can stay sane by being married to the welfare system, by not have dealing with a man and feeling like, okay, they don't need a man. They could be independent. But the long term effect and who really gets affected is the child. You know, so, but you can't really blame the left. You got to blame the people that voted for the left. The left side, who then created the welfare system, because of welfare, you can get on welfare by choice. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of times people want to be married to welfare instead of doing the things that they need to do. Okay, use welfare to your advantage, but also do the things and the work that need to be done to long-term benefit your family, as in doing the right thing by the system for the system then to help you, so then you can get off the system. And it then benefits those who really need it to, you know, who's trying to get their things together or trying to figure life out, you know, having a hard time, a rough patch, and really need that aid and assistance. You know what I'm saying? Families that really need it. You know what I'm saying? But don't get comfortable, complacent, and staying on it with the simple fact of it's jeopardizing your family, the nuclear family, where a mother and father should be in a house, because the simple fact is being a more egocentric, selfish vibe. You know what I'm saying? Where as if mothers feel like, okay, I could be bad all by myself. You know what I'm saying? But two are always greater than one. But nowadays, you know, they'd rather run to the system. So we got a lot of facts in that.
Not talk about it because if you're white, you'll be accused of dissing single moms who are heroically raising these kids, or you'll be accused of being a racist, or if you're black, you'll be accused, as I was by the LA Times, of being the black face of white supremacy. Nobody's talking about that. I am.
What are the reasons, you know, if your statistics are right, what are the reasons that you think fathers aren't in the home?
As I said, it's because in the mid-'60s, Lyndon Johnson launched what he called the War on Poverty. In Charlemagne, literally, they sent social workers door to door in the inner city. I remember this, advising women of the availability of welfare provided there was no man in the house. It created an economic incentive for women to marry the government. Same thing with whites. In 1965, 8% of whites entered the world without a father in the home married to the mother. Now it's about 25%, also up threefold. Look at census data, 1910, 1920, 1930, in places like Milwaukee, Chicago, Philadelphia. A young black kid was slightly more likely to be brought into a world with a father in the home married to the mother than a young white kid. We have incentivized this kind of bad behavior, and it's had a disproportionately bad effect on the black community.
Let me ask you a question. What do white people do wrong, Larry Elder?
What do you mean, what do white people do? I'm not worried about white people. I'm worried about what's going on.
What does that question have to do with anything with the simple fact of him saying the things that have been done to incentivize a norm that's later affecting all of us together as people, no matter the color? You get what I'm saying? Which is, families that's in need then being married by the welfare system, which is mothers where a father and mother is not being raised in a child is not being raised in a household with a father and a mother, but instead of a single mother. And a lot of these things plays a part, because if you look at to this present day, those statistics back in 1940 and 1960 and 1965, those things he mentioned with the census and social workers going to door, helping those in need to then get married in the government. The long-term effect of it from yesteryear is still present today, where women feel like they're independent, they can do all bad by themselves, they don't need a man. When really in reality is a man, provides, and the woman will be his helper aside, and they will grow together. Because back then, a man and a woman, father and a mother, used to be in a household, and they used to stick together, figure it out, work it out, and stay strong and have a strong foundation. Now that foundation has weakened, where things get a little rough, things get a little challenging, people just quit on each other. People just opt out. Women just leave, kick the man to the curb, put him on, been married to the system. And the principles and the morals of standing up and having a strong founded family with a strong foundation and a strong sense of upbringing of a background for the child has now weakened, because females feel they can do bad all by themselves. They're independent, and it's cool to be independent. And if you're not independent, or if you have a man, you're considered to be looked at different or weak. Like, girl, you don't need him. He this, that, and the third. You can do this all by yourself. And the perspective has changed. The insight has changed. And consider having a man nowadays is consider you're a weak female. You know what I'm saying? So females feel as though, I don't need no man. Like I said, it's not about needing a man. It's about, especially if you have a kid, being with that person you had a kid with, and having a strong background and a strong family foundation to then raise that kid rightfully so, and not have the system raise them, and you not to be married to the system, but then you work together as a family to show that strong family background, which then be passed down to the child, because the beauty of it, and Michelle Obama, Barack Obama's wife, said it very well. A lot of people think that marriage is easy. Marriage is all, you get married and is milk and honey, or is piece of cake, but it's not. You'll have those times where it's challenging, where you get annoyed with someone, but you love them enough where you can't live without them. They have your best interests at heart. All those things in which it's been stood for are now or have vanished.
With us.
But if there's systemic racism in this country, which we know it is.
No, I don't say there is. You say there is. I don't.
Exactly. He just said he said the things that have incentivized to break down the strong founded family with a father and mother being in the house due to, now single mothers being married to the system instead of worrying about the background of having a father and mother in the house for the long-term effects of their child, to then benefit their child or benefit the child of that mother and father, instead of them being together. Now, since the left has pushed for welfare, the woman would rather marry the government, instead of marrying the person they had a child with, to then have a strong founded background and a strong foundation as a family, which would then benefit the family, and also the child will be a less chance of being locked up, committing a crime, and actually harming themselves. And he said the things that are being incentivized and the things that have been put in place to cause these things were now it's a fatherless household. Explaining the government, individuals, single mothers married to the government, and just fatherless homes being more so popular than ever. What does that have to do with systemic racism? Because he said a lot of people would call it systemic racism because of fatherless households. But that's not the case. That's not what I say, but a lot of people would say that. So that's why I'm happy Larry Elder checked him right here, because he said that a lot of people would say, just as they told me in the LA Times, that I'm this black supporter for white supremacy, which I'm not. And a lot of things that's not being talked about, but instead these are the points that need to be talked about, which are the things that have been incentivized for fatherless homes to take place. And he gave the statistics from 1940 to 1965, and he said with good intentions, the individuals, Leonard, I believe he mentioned, with good intentions, he had good intentions, he believed a white welfare was put in place. But instead, it been flipped around for things to be incentivized with social workers going to single mother households, and households that are, in need, and then putting them on welfare and encourage them to get on welfare and get the support, where now a father or mother in the household doesn't even matter because they feel like they're supported by the government more than standing strong with the person they made a child with and being strong, having a strong background with a father or mother for the sake of their child in a household. So he's trying to spin it off in many ways, but I'm happy that Larry Elder is checking them in many ways.
I don't believe that.
Oh, you don't believe this?
No, there used to be, obviously. Tell me what you think the number one systemic example of systemic racism is in America.
Oh man, there's so many.
Just give me the most important one you think.
At the top of mind, I'll probably maybe mass incarceration.
Systemic racism. Charlemagne couldn't even answer the question. He said, it's so many. He said, just give me one reason why there's systemic racism. Yes, there were some systemic racism, but tell me how systemic racism connects with fatherlessness nowadays in America. And look at his face. He can't even answer the question. Mass incarceration. But he told you that fatherlessness leads to mass incarceration because a child is 10 times more likely to go to jail. But let's keep going.
Maybe.
Really? During the Great Depression, when 50% of black adults were unemployed, you didn't have this kind of mass incarceration. It's the breakdown of the family.
Facts.
There's
I'm not going to. I agree with the family part. I'm a black man who is a father to his children, and I'm a happily married black man to a black woman. So I'm never going to argue with that part, But I just feel like everything is black with you. Black is wrong. Black people do this and black people do that. And when I asked you what white people do wrong, you said you're not worried about white people at all.
I'm talking about the damage, disproportionate damage going on in the black community. For example, look at these smash and grabs that are taking place in Los Angeles, where I live. There's a suburb called Glendale, where at a mall recently, a mob of 30 to 40 people, they had masks on, but one guy got popped. He was black. I think most of those who were doing this were black. And in recent years and times, there have been a number of these in places like Chicago, places like New York. If I were involved in something like that, Charlemagne, I grew up with a dad just as you're.
See, it's crazy because right here, I just came to mind. He asked him what's causing fatherlessness. Now, Charlemagne is trying to spin it off and say, what do white people do?
I'm not going to. I agree with the family part. I'm a black man who is a father to his children, and I'm a happily married black man to a black woman. So I'm never going to argue with that part, But I just feel like everything is black with you. Black is wrong. Black people do this and black people do that. And when I asked you what white people do wrong, you said you're not worried about white people at all.
I'm talking about the damage, disproportionate damage going on in the black community. For example, look at these smash and grabs that are taking place in Los Angeles, where I live. There's a suburb called Glendale, where at a mall recently, a mob of 30 to 40 people, they had masks on, but one guy got popped. He was black. And I think most of those who were doing this were black. And in recent years and times, there have been a number of these in places like Chicago, places like New York. If I were involved in something like that, Charlemagne, I grew up with a dad, just as you're raising your own children. I would have been more afraid of my father than I would about the cops catching me. These kids are afraid.
True. That is true. Be more afraid of my father than the cops catching me.
If neither, they don't have a father in the home. Cops are demoralized. They're pulling back. Their manpower is short. And as a result, you tell a bad guy you're less likely to be caught, convicted, incarcerated, crime goes up. They may be criminals, but they're not stupid. When you say, what do white people do? I mean, this...
You know, he said it.
Crime goes up. They may be criminals, but they're not stupid. When you say, what do white people do? I mean, this is a country that has struggled mightily to get over its historic racism. There was a civil war. There was a big civil rights movement. This is the only majority white country that's ever elected a black president, let alone re-elected a black president.
Right.
The 3 biggest cities in America.
See, you have to choose your side of the road, right? You can't sit here and make this a black and white thing. At the end of the day, fatherlessness impacts a whole lot. As he said, he has mentioned the disproportionate within the family. And a lot of people want to marry a lot of single households. He said mothers wants to marry the government. And no matter how you put it, having a single mother in a household with a child, for example, a boy, the mother will always have that feminine nature. So the limited time that a man has with their son, the father who spends time with the son, has to undo the feminine nature on which he's always around, because now he has to show them how to stand up for himself, how to be a young man, how to think logically and not being emotionally stable in all his ways, being double-minded, but actually standing up for something and not falling for anything. You know, all these things as a young man, you know, having self-control, you know, all these things that are important. And you can be an active father, and that father that's with that child for a limited time has to undo all the feminine things that have been shown to them on a daily basis from being with the mother in a single household. So being an active father doesn't mean it's effective, because a father and a mother in the house, the nuclear family, as he mentioned, is far way more effective, right? And you have to choose your side of the road. You have to sit here. You can't sit here and say mass incarceration or systemic racism, when, for example, you are the responsible person and a responsible citizen and should be a responsible law-abiding citizen because there's no ignorance for the law, right? But there's no ignorance in raising your child instead of letting the government and police, who are demoralized, like he mentioned, and short of manpower to police your children, when you should be teaching your children how to have self-control to then police themselves, to be a good law-abiding citizen, to then be a service to the community instead of a disservice and a liability. Let's get it.
Or New York, Chicago, LA, they all have black mayors, even though no city has a majority of black population. The president of Harvard is a black female. Martin Luther King in 1966, Charlemagne, gave an interview to the BBC. This is 2 years after the Civil Rights Act of '64 got passed. And he said, I'm amazed at how many positive changes there have been in America in the last 2 years. Why, if things keep going like this, we could have a black president in about 40 years' time. Do the math. Right on cue, Barack Obama, elected in 2008. He didn't say there'll be a black female president of Harvard, and there has been. He didn't say there are going to be black CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, and there have been several. He didn't say the percentage of the House would equal the percentage of black people in the population, and it does. He didn't say the 3 largest cities would have black mayors, and they do. He didn't say the largest and most prestigious organization of doctors, the American Medical Association, would have 2 black presidents, and there have been. He didn't say the most prestigious organization of lawyers, the American Bar Association, would have 2 black presidents, and they have. He said president, meaning at that point, I can feel that I've reached the mountaintop, which is the speech he gave right before he got assassinated the day before. And now we act as if Barack Obama never even got elected. And we're still talking about systemic racism. It's not fair. It's wrong. And you're discouraging black people from working hard. 1990s.
Okay. Mr. Elder, a quick question. Let's just remove the
Discouraging them from working hard. Exactly. Excuses. Your children cannot eat excuses. They may learn excuses, but excuses don't put food on the table. And excuses don't effectively teach them what they need to know. That's like, for example, a lot of parents look for teachers to raise and teach their child as they drop their child off to the education system. You know, the school board of education, you know, wherever school within their local community they choose within their choice to put their child in to attend, right? So let's say someone, for example, put their child in a school in their local community, the school board of education, whatever that school is, right? So a teacher that's not qualified, that's not effectively, you know, teaching the things that need to be taught to your child is lacking. Your child is not reading in a level that he should be for his age or her age. For instance, the excuses that he's talking about is typically the teacher will be blamed. But instead, the parent should be blamed and take accountability and should be taking accountability for realizing, okay, this teacher is not qualified. This school board system is not effectively teaching my child. And of my choice, is it my fault that I put my child in this education system to then fail my child? So I then should put him somewhere elsewhere or her elsewhere where they will effectively be taught the things that they need to be taught to read at the effective, to read at the utmost required reading level and skill level that they should be at. And I should hold myself accountable for that because I am responsible and no one else is responsible for my child's growth education wise. Along with what I teach them in everyday life. To then be a law abiding, optimistic, great of a citizen in his or her local community as my child. You know, raising them well. You know, so a lot of people would blame, a typical person would blame the teacher, the school, whatever, and that would be their excuses to why their child is failing instead of them taking the accountability as the parent and the choices that they make. Because a lot of people don't understand, especially as parents, and I'm a parent. I'm a father to my son. The choices and the decisions that we make is bigger than us. It doesn't just affect us, it affects our child, right? Just like, for example, those, you know, who have parents, their decisions have positively or negatively affected us and impacted us in some way or somehow. So your decisions don't only affect you, whether you believe it or not, especially as a parent. So that's where I understand where he's going with, you know, we're encouraging the excuses to be brought on instead of working, which is being discouraged. Just as also, for example, your child get a syllabus. You know, you're a parent, you know, you meet the teachers, you know, first day of school, you know, the teacher say, hey, dad, you know, hey, mom, this is the syllabus for the child. This all the things that we learning during the school year. You see the tests, when the tests will take place, what chapters will be learned, when they will be learned, when they will be taught. So then you can brush up as a parent, being responsible, holding yourself accountable to also make sure your child is being taught effectively and you playing a part of that, and not just blaming the school system, but put it in the, not blaming the school system at all actually, but put it in the work. and sitting with your child when they need help with homework and being able to teach them effectively because you brushed up on it and know where they were going with it and knew what courses, what lessons were taking place to be then tested on because you schooled yourself on the syllabus for the school year and what your child will be learning. So then you brushed up on the skills as necessary to teach your child and help your child with homework. So then the additional information and another way of learning that skill can be then taught at school if that tends to help them to easily or better understand, seeing how it's being taught and learned in different ways which then fit for them. Along with choosing the best education system and the best schooling system that effectively teaches your child in a positive way to persevere, grow, and evolve, right? But let's see what she has to say since she cut him off about him discouraging people to work.
Word racism, since that seems to be a word that triggers, a conversation down the water hole. Let's just focus on the word system.
Okay.
You mentioned that the system.
She doesn't want to talk about the racism, but Charlamagne the God, the one that mentioned statistic racism, he said racism doesn't play a part. Racism was a thing, but there's no excuse for that now. It's just discouraged workers and fatherless homes and the things that have been put to incentivize these things to be taking place. Even though the left and those who have brought on welfare and so forth had good intentions, but the individuals that then use the system to their advantage and then buck the system and use the system to their advantage and then be lazy and be discouraged to not do the things that are in their best interest or necessary for them and their child and their family and being a strong family, which now isn't a big thing if you're a family or not. When family should be just as important when it comes to raising a child, who you have a child with, and so forth. But she wants to focus now on systems. Let's see what she has to say.
System was the one that discouraged. And again, we have no problem with agreeing that the family, the black family, should certainly has some room for some improvement. But let's just focus on system.
Room for improvement?
System. Well, we're not going to go down that water. We're not going to go down that water hole. Let's get to the question. So the question is.
She mentioned it though. Listen to this.
Has some room for some improvement, but let's just focus on system.
Room for
was the one that discouraged. And again, we have no problem with agreeing that the family, the black family, should certainly has some room for some improvement. But let's just focus on system.
Room for improvement.
System. Well, we're not going to go down that.
Now we're not going to go down that water hole either. Room for improvement. So no, we're not going to hold the black or whatever accountable or the family accountable, the community accountable, even though there is some room for improvement. But we're gonna downplay that. We're not going to talk about that. We're not going to go down that water hole either. We're not going to go about we're not going to go about systemic racism either. We're not going to go down that water hole either. We're just going to focus on systems. We're going to focus on what I want us to focus on, not what was mentioned, not what was proposed, not what was then stated from Charlamagne the God as an issue, as a mass incarceration being the reason of systemic racism and so forth. We're going to focus on systems. So we're not going to hold ourselves accountable. We're not going to hold the community accountable. We're just going to focus on systems. And let's see where she go from here. Since she wants to downplay all the other stuff, which is being discussed, which is the main objective, let's see if I can stir the pot, and let's see if I can detach from the main objective, and let's make the conversation go the way I want it. That's what she's basically saying right here. I don't want to talk about that stuff. I want to talk about what I want to talk about. We're going to focus on systems. So now she's basically trying to stir away from what really need to be talked about, which has been talked about, because she don't want to talk about it.
We're not going to go down that water hole. Let's get to the question. So the question is, you said that the system encouraged black women to be single mothers, correct?
I said the welfare state, yes.
Exactly. The system. She said the welfare. He didn't say systems. He said the welfare. That's why I said she's going to focus on systems, but she's going to use the keyword systems to her advantage to then try to derail derail the conversation and change the subject from the main objective. And I'm happy that Elder is standing on his square and letting it be known. See, I believe black culture and all that is canceled. I don't believe in all that. I just believe we stand together as a community and stand strong and strong foundations within. And I believe, put it like this. Black culture is canceled. We need to stop making it a black and white thing. It's trash. You know, it's black on black and Black Lives Matter and all that stuff. It's trash. Black culture is trash. That's the thing that then enrages this black and white and systemic stuff in the first place. We all are people, no matter if you black, white, orange, purple, red, I don't care, blue. We all stand together, and the decisions we make and the things we do within our communities affect each other. We need to all come together and do what's in the best interest of each other and be respectfully, rightfully so, how can I put this? Be rightfully so doing what's right. Because what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong, you know. We need to stop kicking the trash. We need to stop kicking the can down the street. Kicking the can, and all these excuses and all these reasons or so-called reasons that we want to believe in. Because, you know, a lot of people there's a lot of people out there, man, that will have an excuse or have a reason that's not even an adequate reason, and they'll keep saying it over and over, where they make themselves believe in their own stories, fantasies, or excuses. We need to stop kicking the can down the aisle, pick it up, stick together as a whole, no matter what color we are, and do the things that's in the best interest of us as American citizens. Standing up for the importance of strong households, you know, sticking together in regards of what's in the best interest of, voting, educating ourselves on voting and how to vote right, you know, because our government is a representation of who we vote for, who we choose. So the issues and things that have been taking place are the things in which we voted for, because the government is a legal representative of us as the people. We, the people. And I feel like those are the important things of coming together and sticking together. Those are my points, my opinion, you know. But let's go. She wants to focus on systems.
We're not going to go down that water hole. Let's get to the question. So the question is, you said that the system encouraged black women to be single mothers, correct?
I said the welfare state, yes.
The system. So who's in charge of the system? Who was in charge of the system?
Well, it was Democrats that passed it.
And who were Democrats? Were they black or white at that time?
Well, at the time, majority of black people were Democrats, as the majority of black people are Democrats now.
Not the voters. I'm talking about the system. Remember, the main idea is the word system.
Oh, not the voters, but the people voted them in. So why do you think the system was even created? Because those who vouch for the system are the individuals. See, this is what it is. This is what it is. See, when you vote, most of the time you're voting for the person that's lobbying the interest that you have and that you stand for, and that candidate that's lobbying your interests, that's important to you, you will then vote for them. See, a lot of times that candidate or that president or that mayor of your local city, because it goes down deeper than that. It's not the president. It goes down to your legislators, state legislators, your mayor, state legislator, superintendents. Some people don't even know they superintendents at their local community, like in the school board system. Those things are effectively important, which trickle down to this system, But the systems that are taking place, like I said, in the government, is a legal representation of who we vote for and what we vote for and what we stand for. So you can't get mad at that. You know what I'm saying? So the people who voted for these individuals that then made these systems, because what she mean we're not going to talk about the voters. Voting what creates the system. That's why when you vote, you have to be educated and not ignorant for what you vote or who you vote for. Because then you can't be mad for the thing that you voted for is what you received. You have to pick what side you're going to be on. The left side of the street or the right side of the street. If you stand in the middle, you're going to get hit. You're going to get hit. It's going to be a collision. You have to pick a side. It can't be both. So, when he mentioned the Democrats, and they're still more popular, there still is Democrats by popular demand, those individuals who ran the system, the welfare states. But she wants to focus on systems and be ignorant to the voters. But the voters are being ignorant to the simple fact that these are the systems created that you voted for. Just like, for example, a lot of people don't even know that a mayor doesn't have power at all. A superintendent of a school has more power than a mayor. So if you're mad at the school system in your local communities that you feel are failing your children, what is the mayor going to do? The mayor only said what they needed to say to get your vote to then be a mayor of the city or whatever city you're in, right? But the superintendent has more power than the mayor to put those things in place that you're aware of in your community to then effectively fix them and focus on the things that need to be focused on by you being aware and active individual in the community. Because 9 times out of 10, those individuals that you voted for, they don't know every crevice or cranny within the community that you're in. You know what's going on in the community because you're actually in the community. So you know the right people and you vote rightfully so, being educated and educating yourself on how to vote the right way. Those individuals that you didn't vote for, lobbying your interests and what you're interested in from being aware of the community, you can then go to those people that you voted in effectively to then bring awareness to those individuals. So monies and so forth could be dispersed to then rightfully so create a proper, structured, effective system by awareness being brought to them by you educating yourself on those who you then voted for, like your legislators, and all those individuals that have been put in office and which you pay your taxes rightfully so too for them to be paid and fly out and so forth. So, but like she said right here, we're not going to worry about the voters. We're going to focus on systems.
It has some room for some improvement, but let's just focus on system.
Room for improvement?
System. Well, we're not going to go down that water. We're not going to go down that water hole. Let's get to the question. So the question is, you said that the system encouraged Black women to be single mothers, correct?
I said the welfare state, yes.
The welfare, the system. So who's in charge of the system? Who was in charge of the system?
Well, it was Democrats that passed it.
And who were Democrats? Were they Black or white at that time?
Well, at the time, majority of Black people were Democrats, as the majority of Black people are Democrats now.
Not the voters. I'm talking about the system. Remember, the main idea is the word system. Who was in charge of the system at the time? The Democrats at the time, the system. I'm just going to Charlamagne's point about white or Black. Was it white Democrats in charge of the system or Black Democrats in charge of the system?
Well, if you're prepared to say that Lyndon Johnson did this viciously with an intent to destroy the Black family.
Like he said, Lyndon Johnson. I'm sorry, he didn't say. I forgot what name. I think I mentioned Leonard earlier. Lenny Johnson. He said earlier that Lenny Johnson, he believed, played a part in the system taking place with the best interest possible.
I disagree. He did it with the best of intentions.
Yeah, the best interest and intentions. There we go.
And if you look at the New York Times, which is left wing, the Washington Post, which is left wing, they cheered all of this.
Right, and what I'm asking was it white people, so I'm going to ask again in case my mic's not coming through clearly. Was it?
See, now she's just being smart and being combative because this is the voice of I want to hear what I want to hear and we're going to talk about what I want to talk about and I don't care what you're saying because you're not saying what I want to say. Basically.
Did white people in charge of the system or Black people in charge of that system that helped break down the Black family? It's a simple yes, just a simple question, white or Black?
Well, you didn't have to go on welfare unless you voluntarily chose to go on welfare. Exactly. The inducement was put there by Democrats, by the left.
Correct? Okay. Democrats,
most black people were Democrats, and they voted for these white people
not
too.
Voters. I said who's in charge of the system.
Well, who puts
Who's in charge?
Who put them in charge?
Was Lyndon
Who puts them in charge?
Johnson white or black?
Who put them in charge?
Maybe that'll help you.
Fine. Lyndon Johnson was white.
Thank you.
Okay. But if your argument is that the reason he did it is because of racism, then I disagree. He did it because of
That's not my argument. I just asked you a simple question. Was he white or black? Charlamagne?
And Mr. Elder, you said you talked about the smash and grabs, right? And I find that interesting because when you see the mass shootings that happen, majority of those people are white males. What do you think about that?
Actually, if you look at the percentage of whites,
Larry Elder is conducting himself very well, man. I got to give it to him.
In America, which is 60%. The percentage of mass shooters is under that. The percentage of people that commit hate crime is under that. The percentage of people who are serial killers is under that. Black people are 13% of the population. We commit a greater percentage compared to that of mass shootings.
You specifically talked about the smash and grabs, though. So I was saying, since you're using that as an example, I'm saying, well, what about the mass shooters that are usually white males?
One more time. They are usually white males because 60% of the country is white. However, they underrepresent in terms of the number of mass shootings. About 50% or so of the mass shootings in this country are committed by white people, even though white people are 60% of the population. They underrepresent. We overrepresent when it comes to hate crime, when it comes to mass shootings, when it comes to serial killings, when it comes to robberies, when it comes to virtually every category of violent crime. We overrepresent.
So what do white people do wrong? I'm gonna keep asking you that because I want.
It seems to me rather than deal with what's going on, the pathology that's going on in the inner city, you want me to talk about how bad white people are, which I don't think is a pretty.
See?
Rather than deal with what's going on, the pathology that's going on in the inner city, you want me to talk about how bad white people are, which I don't think is a particularly productive thing to do.
Well, I think there's a cause and effect, but if we can't talk about the cause, which I believe is systemic racism and white supremacy, the FBI says.
But he asked them what was one of the examples of systemic racism you can give them. He mentioned mass incarceration and still can't back it up. And Larry Elder gave him the statistics of how is being underrepresented and overrepresented by black and whites and so forth. They keep trying to make it a black and white thing. And Larry Elder is saying fatherlessness is important and that we need to take the accountability and work and stop discouraging ourselves to work. Stop discouraging ourselves to work and being complacent. And we need to basically vote right. Vote right. Strong foundations plays a big part in it. And that's basically it. I feel like that's where he's getting at, the main objective, of how a disproportionate thing is taking place with fatherlessness and so forth. But it seems like they want to make it a black and white thing, and Larry Elder ain't going for it, man.
If we can't talk about the cause, which I believe is systemic racism and white supremacy, the FBI says.
Well, I just told you, if it's systemic racism, please explain to me how it was when America really had systemic racism in 1940. 87% of blacks lived under the poverty line. Again, this is during Jim Crow era. My father is from Athens, Georgia, grew up in Jim Crow. My mom is from Huntsville, Alabama, grew up in Jim Crow. 87% of blacks live below the poverty line. This is before Brown versus Board of Education. You did not find these kind of black on black crime.
Probably because we had no
But they still were living below the poverty line, though, sir.
I'm sorry?
You're forgetting the fact that they were still living below the poverty line. You're picking and choosing, saying this was good, but this was bad.
Okay.
The bottom line, they end between the poverty line. But let's move forward on system.
Can I just address that? In 1940, 87% of blacks lived under the poverty line. 1960, that number had fallen to 47%. That's a 40-point drop in 20 years. That's the greatest 20-year period of economic expansion for black people in the history of America. Again, well before Brown versus Board of Education, well before the KKK imploded, well before we had race-based preferences. Why? Because it was rare for a black kid to be raised in a family without a father in the home. A strong belief in Judeo-Christian values, a belief in patriotism, even as America wasn't applying these values to black people, obviously, and a belief in entrepreneurship. All those things are now under assault by organizations like Black Lives Matter. Charlamagne, Black Lives Matter had
hold yourself accountable
on their website an attack on the nuclear family. The founders are self-described Marxists, trained Marxists. Marx wanted to dethrone God, was an atheist, and Marx did not believe in capitalism, let alone entrepreneurship. All the things that made black people still survive in virulent racism are now under attack by organizations like Black Lives Matter.
But all of those things have always been under attack by white supremacy. You can go back to things like whether it's the Tulsa race massacres. Like every time black people do create these systems that are our systems and we are the entrepreneurs, it seems like white supremacy finds a way to destroy it.
Every time, look, the Tulsa massacre, within about 5 years, that whole area was rebuilt. It was not even called the Black Wall Street until after it was rebuilt. And it was rebuilt, by the way, by black people without one dime of government money.
Yeah, but who destroyed it to begin with?
It was racists who destroyed it. No question about it. We've had race riots, but so have Japanese. Hold on.
Exactly. Hold up, let's get to it.
You do agree that there's racism? I'm just so confused.
I never even came close to saying. I never came close to saying there was no racism.
You just said you don't think it's systemic racism.
Not anymore. Obviously, there was. We had something called slavery. We had something called Jim Crow.
That destroyed black. Hold on, sir. That was system that destroyed. That was the system that destroyed Black Wall Street. It's the same system right now that's not even wanting to pay those same living descendants, because I know your position on reparations, but those same living descendants of Black Wall Street.
Okay.
And then you move, and then you go on to say that the system, the quote unquote system, is also trying to destroy President Trump. So I'm just so confused on, do you believe that the system can destroy or not? You pick and choose, sir, and that's what's so confusing to me. You just said it wasn't racism. Now it is racism. When it was time to build it back, there was no racism.
I said it wasn't systemic racism. Let's talk about.
So what are you just hung up on the word system?
Can I just make this point, Charlamagne, please? Let's take Chinese Americans. Chinese Americans were the first ethnic group to be excluded with an Immigration Act in the late 1800s. They had riots against Chinese in L.A., in San Francisco. There were laws that prevented Chinese Americans from participating in the laundry business. I'm in California. California, of course, rounded up Japanese Americans during World War II. There were laws that prevented Japanese Americans from owning farmland. The average Japanese American household has a higher per capita income than the average white household. The average Chinese American household has a higher per capita income than the average white household. How does that happen? It happens because of a strong belief in family. It is rare for a Chinese American.
Strong belief in family. Faith. Foundation.
Or a Japanese American kid to have a child outside of wedlock, and a strong belief in education and a strong belief in entrepreneurship. These are the kinds of qualities that make people successful.
You can't blame everything on having a fatherless family, right? Because
I didn't say blaming everything.
I know, but that's what you're saying. You're saying a strong community. But
no, you said that's what I just said. I didn't say that.
You talk about the Asian community. Asian community, it's easy for them to get loans for entrepreneurships. It's easy for them to get loans for houses. You look at our community.
Okay.
If you really want to talk about our community, right? You look at the schools in our community. Some of our schools are the worst, right? Would you agree with that? Yes or no?
Absolutely.
Which is why
one of the reasons I'm running for president is for school choice.
Also, would you say that is in our community is
systemic?
It's also in our communities heavy food deserts. There's nothing but fast food places that are just killing and destroying that. Would you say that's true?
Systemic too.
Boy.
Would you say that's true? I'm just asking a question.
You said a number of things. I just addressed one of them about loans. Mm-hmm. In 1965, Barack Obama, who was in private practice, joined a bunch of other lawyers to file a class action lawsuit against Citicorp, which is headquartered here in New York. 186 black people were applying for loans for mortgages. They didn't get them, and they accused Citicorp of engaging in racism.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a lot. Let's back this up, because a lot of banks have their own process of receiving a loan. Right, every bank doesn't go about the process the same way, but it's a lot of factors, let's be realistic here, that goes into receiving a loan. They're not just going to give you a loan. Your credit score, your down payment, your credit score, how you financially responsible. You proven to a bank that you are responsible to receive these monies, and the bank will get their monies back. Credit card debt, how do you manage that? Stuff like that. So work history, all those things, and receiving a loan, it's a lot of factors to it, just like receiving a car, for example. So how can loans not be given, or it be this systemic thing that causes loans not to take place, when every bank has their own process, and the process, if it's met, the criteria is met, they receive a loan. If not, then they don't receive a loan based on the factors that's being presented that the individual that's going in for the loan should then present being very responsible, upholding that criteria to then receive a loan.
Citicorp said, no, it's not racism. You have poor credit scores, and we want to make
poor credit
sure
scores.
we get our money back.
Exactly.
Obama joined a bunch of other lawyers, and they sued Citicorp in a class action lawsuit. And Citicorp said, okay, to hell with it. Gave them all loans. And they followed them all up. Daily Caller did a few years later. Almost all of them lost their homes. Several of them filed for bankruptcy. One of them even said, when you don't qualify for a loan, maybe we shouldn't get a loan. Well, duh. It wasn't true that black people were not getting loans. Plus, there are all sorts of black-owned community banks around the country, and it turns out the turn-down rate when you apply for a loan at a community bank was even higher because they had less capital and they couldn't afford to loan money to risky people.
Exactly, and then not get their money back in return.
It is just not the case that the reason for the plight of the black community is because people were not lending money to them. It's just not true.
That's not true. But
that's not true.
That's like, for example, you lend money to someone that you know that's not going to effectively, consistently, or, it's not effective, that's not consistent. They always ask you for money. They don't seem to be financially responsible, and you're going to loan them some money and respect it back. I mean, why? Ignorance, ignorance.
Hold on 1 second, Charlamagne.
What's not
you're
true?
bringing back facts of 1965, right? Let's talk 2023, right?
I said 1995.
1995. We'll talk 2023, right? My son will be successful in real estate and successful in buying a house. You know why? Because his father owns his house.
Because
his father owns a house, right? But my father
because of you and the drive. Because of you and the drive you put into
did
him.
not own houses.
Exactly.
Because of you and the drive you put into it.
We're not going to have a conversation.
You're not even appreciating what you've done to your son.
I'm just asking you a question. I just let you speak and I'll let you talk.
Okay.
Y'all can talk.
We have a conversation.
All right.
But when we talk about it, right, it's harder for our community to get loans, right? And not just because of poor credit scores. It's because of where the areas are. You talked about the Asian community. A lot of the Asian community have their own banks and they're able to process and get their own banks. There's not too many African-American branches that are able to give out money. So that's one. Then let's talk about getting grants for schools. They're not even giving grants for schools at the rate that they're giving grants for white people. And let's talk about when they talk about entrepreneurship. They are giving so much money to these white and Asian kids and Asian people doing it, and a 1,000 times less than our community. Will you agree to any of that?
No, I don't. I don't agree with virtually any of what you just now said.
See, they don't like to deal with someone disagreeing with them. You could agree and disagree with someone and have a discussion,
The turn down rate for a white applicant for a mortgage is higher than the turn down rate for a Japanese or a Chinese applicant for a mortgage. Now, are you telling me that banks are discriminating against white and in favor of Asian Americans? It's because their credit scores are better. They often live below their means. They save more, even when they're making the same amount of money than black people do. If you have poor credit score, you're not going to get a loan. Period. End of statement. Even the head of Urban League, a black man, once said that if you have poor credit score, you're not going to get a loan. End of statement.
Sir,
yes.
Let's just When you were talking about crime, you weren't prepared to talk about disproportion. You talked about how it was more black people that was doing it, and then you talked about how we're the smaller, of the population. The same applies also to the loans. It's more white people than it is black people. You seem to pick and choose.
I'm talking about the rate. I'm talking about the rate.
Whatever it is. The bottom line is it's more.
Whatever it is.
More white people than it is black people. And so if more black people are not getting loans.
How can anybody want to deal with this woman? So combative.
Disproportionately, it seems you only want to apply the disproportion to the conversation when it benefits your talking point.
I'm not sure you understood.
Which is why they say.
She's deflecting. She wants to talk about things when it benefits her talking point. But she's trying to deflect that on Larry Elder, but he's not having it.
I'm not sure you understood. I'm not sure you understood my point. That's why I mentioned in 1995 when 186 black people who were not getting loans filed a class action lawsuit claiming that they were denied the loan because of racism. Citicorp said, okay, here are your loans. The reason I wasn't giving you the loans is because we're afraid you weren't going to be able to pay them back.
I'm not talking about
Fast forward,
sir.
they weren't able to pay them back, which proved the Citicorp point.
I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about
I know
that.
you're not. Because inconvenient.
I'm talking about your
Exactly, because it's inconvenient.
response to Envy when you said more white people get approved for loans.
Since you like numbers, Washington Post said black Americans have the highest denial rates for purchase and refinance of loans, according to Home Mortgage Disclosures Act.
Because of their credit
They credit scores and they don't pay them back.
And all credit scores are the same. 15% of Hispanic loan applicants were denied, compared with about 11% of white and 10% of Asian applicants with same credit scores. And that's Washington Post, since you love numbers so much, and I know you do love numbers. That's coming from the Washington Post. That's 2023, not 1995.
I can show you a study that says the opposite.
Let me ask you a question,
Yeah.
Mr. Elder. Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, and I'm pretty sure everybody who just caught a RICO with him in Georgia, they all had fathers, and they still ended up in jail. How did that happen?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody said nobody said if you have a father you won't go to jail. And nobody said if you didn't have a father you were going to jail. My father never.
But guess what you did say, Mr. Elder? I'm sorry, respectfully.
May I answer his question?
She's very, very disruptive.
What you did say.
May I answer his question?
Let him finish his statement, Ted.
Okay.
My father never knew his biological father. He got thrown out of the house when he was 13 years old. 8th grade dropout, Jim Crow South, Athens, Georgia. Fast forward, my dad cleaned toilets, 2 full-time jobs cleaning toilets when I was growing up. Went to night school to get his GED, and then after that, he went to night school to learn how to operate a small restaurant. Age of 47, my dad saves his nickels and dimes from his job, starts a small restaurant near downtown L.A. Fast forward, he retires in his 80s. He owned that restaurant. He owned property next door, plus the house that's still in our family. Not too shabby for somebody who did not know his biological father. It's not a death sentence. You still have choices. It's just much, much more difficult to raise a child on your own. Even Tupac Shakur said, I know for a fact. Tupac, excuse me. I know for a fact, had I had a father, I would have been more confident. I would have been more disciplined. End of quote.
Well, how did all those white men end up in jail when they still had fathers? The Trumps and the Giuliani. I'm just asking the question. Like, how did they end up in jail?
He just said just because you have a father doesn't mean that you won't end up in jail. You have choices.
Because some people commit crimes.
No, sir. Stop. My apologies for interrupting you earlier. I just couldn't stomach the answer that I knew you were going to say.
Couldn't stomach the answer?
Yeah, I couldn't stomach because your actual answer to Trump being what was happening to him with the indictments, you actually said that the system was doing it. You said there was a 2-tier system. This is your words.
That's right.
That it was a 2-tier system. So when it came to Trump, all of a sudden you now believe in this systematic thing that's happening to Trump. But then when it happens to black people,
but it's not about race. It's not about race.
I didn't ask you that. I asked you. Remember, I made it easy for you, and I took race out of it. Remember, I said I'm just talking about the system. I'm just talking about the system.
If you want,
you took race out of it, but you asked what color, black or white, was. This lady is all over the place, bro.
If you want to ask me whether I believe Donald Trump is being treated the same way as Joe Biden and is being treated the same way as Hillary Clinton, all of these people are white. All these people are white. There's a double standard.
Well,
Mr. Elder, you didn't hear my question.
You said that
you didn't hear my question.
You said some people commit crimes, so you do believe that Trump, Giuliani, they committed a crime.
I don't know.
But you just said some people commit crimes.
I said some people committed a crime. I didn't say Donald Trump committed a crime. If you ask me specifically whether I believe Donald Trump committed a crime,
I don't.
I don't.
Specifically about those people and why they ended up in jail and they all got fathers.
Well, Donald Trump is not in jail.
Well, he got indicted.
Yeah, he got indicted. That's a far cry from being in jail.
Why did he get indicted?
Well, he got arrested, is what I'm saying. He's going to get arrested.
He's been arrested. He got indicted, in my opinion, because the DOJ has a double standard. They let Hillary pass, for example. She clearly violated the Espionage Act by having an unsecured server in her basement. She paid for the Steele dossier. She destroyed 30,000 emails that were under subpoena, and she got a wrist slap. And Donald Trump is now being indicted, I think, for the 4th time. It's unfair.
Right.
Black people have been telling y'all how corrupt the FBI is for a long time.
And the FBI has been corrupt. There was COINTEL, the FBI. J. Edgar Hoover also wiretapped MLK under Robert Kennedy, a Democrat Attorney General, Malcolm X, lots of things. Right. And I find it interesting how the same people who criticize the FBI historically are now defending the FBI because they're going after Donald Trump.
Oh, we're not defending the FBI.
I didn't say you.
Okay. See what I'm saying? Oh, we're not defending the FBI. But he's saying, let's look at it from all points and all perspectives. Stop just trying to see it just from your lens. That's the problem with these people, man.
Or I said some of the same people.
We're just looking and saying, damn, finally.
But what's your thoughts with Florida? And you see that they're trying to take our history out of these history books and not trying to teach our history. What's your thoughts?
I find it interesting that the Democrats are the ones complaining about Florida. This is a party of slavery, party of Jim Crow, the party of the KKK, the party of the Southern Manifesto, the party of Dred Scott, the party that I said earlier destroyed the nuclear intact family, and the party that is opposing school choice. And now they want to lecture Florida on making sure the proper history of slavery is taught. I don't know anybody who's defending slavery. Anybody. Not Ron DeSantis. He's not defending.
People benefited from slavery.
Actually, you're talking about one line. You're talking about one line in about 127 pages of the study, and it is a line that was repeated almost verbatim in the associated in the advanced placement African American course that the DeSantis administration refused to use because of all of the sexual stuff that was in it. It's basically the same thing that was in the advanced placement African American courses, and now because it's in that, all of a sudden the governor is accused of somehow defending slavery. He's not doing anything of the sort.
What did you think about that?
Well, sir, you were actually one that defended slavery. In your comments, you said that, like it or not, slavery was legal in response to reparations. So it's you that was defending slavery, correct?
Defending it and saying that it's illegal are two very different things. Slavery, unfortunately.
Well, that was your response. That was your response into if reparations should happen. So your response to that was, like it or not, slavery was legal, and one would think that was a defense on those who were asking.
Well, you would think it was a defense, but it is not a defense. Unfortunately, slavery has been part and parcel of human history from the very beginning. Asians enslaved Asians, whites enslaved whites, blacks enslaved blacks, Native Americans enslaved Native Americans. This is a culture, the Western civilization, that had a revulsion against it. We had a civil war against it. And we ought to applaud ourselves for doing something about this. This is a flawed country. It's moving forward. It's becoming more perfect all the time. Today, if you are born and raised in America, if you finish high school, presumably one where you can read, write, and compute at grade level, which is why I support school choice, don't have a kid before you're 20, get married first, get a job, keep a job, don't quit it until you get another job, and avoid the criminal justice system, you will not be poor. And if you don't follow that formula, there's a good chance you will be.
You know, the first GOP debate is coming up, and you didn't qualify, and I saw you writing.
Well, you didn't say I've not yet qualified. It's not until August 21.
Oh, okay. Well, I saw you writing the op-ed that the Republican National Committee has rigged the rules of the game by instituting a set of criteria that is so onerous. What is it? Onerous.
Onerous.
And poorly designed.
I mispronounced Tupac, so you mispronounced onerous.
That's
So we're even.
You are really petty, Mr.
And he said, poorly designed that only establishment and billionaire candidates are guaranteed to be on stage. Explain to us why that system hurts people.
Well, I ran for governor of California. I got 3.5 million votes. It seemed to me that made me credible. The RNC is requiring us to have 1% or 40,000 individual donors. In 2020, the DNC required you to have 1% or a certain number of donors. For reasons that I don't quite understand, the RNC is requiring you to have both of them. One of the candidates in this race is a multimillionaire. He's offered a $20 gift certificate if you give $1. Another one is offering a free, air quotes, country western concert if you give $1. Another one is giving you a commission if you are a prospective donor to go out and get other prospective donors. It seems to me that corrupts the whole process. I'm doing it the old-fashioned way, Charlamagne. I'm asking people to support me and go to my website, larryelder.com, and give me at least $1. If I get $1 from 40,000 individuals, I will be up on that stage in Milwaukee on August 23. And when I get up there, game on, hold my beer.
So why is this system? Is this system holding you back?
Go ahead.
Would you say it's a system holding you back?
I would say it's unfair. It seems to me this early, the voters ought to decide this. I mean, in 2016, there were 17 or 18 Republican candidates. Now there's 13. Somehow, some way, our republic survived, and we could survive with 13 candidates. I don't know why they have all this rule to eliminate certain people at this point. But rather than
those systems can hold you back no matter how hard you work, right?
No, I'm going to say, but rather than whine about it, my goal is to get on as many shows as I can, like yours. Urge people to go to larryelder.com, give at least $1, even if you want somebody else.
He's working, man. He's hustling. He ain't complaining.
Don't you think it's wise for us to talk about the epidemic of fatherlessness, the lie that America remains systemically racist, and the need for school choice? 13 public high schools in Baltimore, 0% of the kids can do math at grade level. Are you kidding me? 53 public high schools in Chicago, 0% of the kids can do math at grade level. Meanwhile, the Democratic Party is opposed to school choice, while the party elites, whether it's Barack Obama or Gavin Newsom or Joe Biden, have their own kids in private school. It is wrong, and we need to talk about that.
Larry Elder, why would somebody from our community vote for you, or why should they vote for you? Why should a black person vote for you?
Because I'm telling the truth, and the truth oftentimes is unpleasant. It's not pleasant for me to be called the black face of white supremacy, as the LA Times did. It's not pleasant for me to be accused of being anti-black, as Tavis Smiley once called me, because I don't support reparations. By the way, Barack Obama never supported reparations. Nobody called him anti-black. We need to talk about what's going on. What's going on is the breakdown of the family. And most of the things we complain about downstream, whether it's crime or whether it's bad schools, the genesis is the breakdown of the nuclear intact family, and we don't talk enough about it.
Do you agree that our community is hit harder with a lot of things that you just said, whether it is racism, whether it is getting loans, whether it is getting entrepreneurship, whether it is education, whether it is all those things? You do understand that and agree with that, correct?
I do, but much of it is either self-inflicted or because of policies that we have supported.
Exactly. Learn how to vote and stop making excuses and make the better choices in your life.
Branch that we have supported. I wrote a book called, it's coming out in October. It's called As Goes California, My Mission to Rescue the Golden State and Save the Nation. It's about the one-party rule in California. California has supermajorities of Democrats in the Senate and in the House. And as a result, our schools are near the bottom. People are leaving California for the very first time. We have the highest state income tax in the country. The average price of a home in California costs 175% above the national average, all because of these left-wing policies that are hurting the very people, black and brown people living in the inner city, that people on the left claim that they care about.
Do you think slavery was self-inflicted? Or do you think Jim Crow segregation was self-inflicted? Or do you think,
slavery was self-inflicted? Of course, it wasn't self-inflicted, but there are a lot of people have bloody hands in slavery. Mm-hmm. For example, slavery could not have existed had it not been for African chieftains who were selling black slaves captured.
Exactly. We want to keep talking about slavery. Black people sold their own people, bro. It's as simple as that.
Battle or captured through raids and selling them to European and Arab slavers. It could not have existed without that. So everybody has dirty hands here. That's why reparations is such a foolish thing. If you're going to get reparations from the 5% or so of white people that have some sort of generational connection to slavery, and that's all there is, then you need to go back to Africa and get money from African countries that were involved in the slave trade and in the Arab slave trade. And by the way, the Arab slave trade was even worse than the European slave trade. 90% rate of attrition, often making men and women walk on barefoot across the Sahara, and the men were castrated. Only about
So if they go after the money from the other countries, then would you agree that it would be okay to go after the money from America? Is that your problem with it?
When are you going to stop with this? Everybody has a grievance.
I just asked a simple question.
I'm answering your question. There's no end. There'll be no end to this because slavery has been part of human history from the very beginning.
Okay, we'd be getting money. I've let you talk. Sir, I've let you talk. And every time I talk, you begin to talk, and then you say, let you finish. So I asked you a very simple question. You said, if you're going to go after it in America, go after it in Africa. So if we all agree to go after it in Africa, will you then agree to go after it in America? It's just a simple question. Yes or no?
No, I won't, because it's a waste of time. We ought to be spending our time on education.
Next question.
Okay. You told me that I cut you off. Then I tried to answer your question. You won't let me finish.
Go ahead, Larry.
Thank you. It's a waste of time. We ought to be talking about working hard, investing in ourselves. Right now, as we speak, there are Haitians in Haiti lining up for a lottery to come into this country. Why? Because it is the land of the free and the home of the brave. You can go from nothing to something faster in America than any other country in all of human history. We ought to be talking about that. Let me just, one more point. 1997, Time Magazine and CNN hooked up together to do a poll on what black teenagers and white teenagers felt about racism. Mm-hmm. And both of them were asked, is racism a major problem in America? Both of them said yes. But then Time and CNN asked this question of the black teenagers. Is racism a big problem, a small problem, or no problem in your own daily life? This is 1997. 89% of them said small problem or no problem in my own daily life. In fact, twice as many blacks said failure to take advantage of available opportunities is a bigger problem than racism.
That was
1997. Look it up.
Because decisions is everything.
2023, though.
You think America's more racist now after the election and re-election of Barack Obama than it was in 1997?
Yes, because of the election of MAGA, Donald Trump, 100%. Yes.
Really?
Absolutely.
Well, how is it, Charlemagne, that Donald Trump got 8% of the black vote in 2016? He got 12% in 2020, a 50% increase. He got 20% of the black male vote in 2020. If MAGA is racist, how do you explain that Donald Trump substantially increased the percentage of black votes the Republican Party got?
Sometimes people make poor
So why are you
choices.
running against Trump then, Mr. Elder?
Yeah,
I'm not running against him. I'm running against Biden Harris. Any one of the Republican nominees we have would be better than what we have right now. I'm not running against him. I'm running to put forth the issues I just now mentioned that I've been talking about for the last few minutes.
I want to ask you about that. After 4 indictments, 91 criminal charges, don't you think it would behoove the Republican Party to move on from Donald Trump?
I think that the voters in the primary will make that decision.
What do you think, though?
I have no problem with I thought Donald Trump did an extraordinary job as president, especially for black people. Best economy ever. He did something about the borders. The people that are most hurt because of porous borders are black people living in the inner city, because most of the illegal aliens have little or no education. They end up living in the inner city. They compete against black people with high school or less for jobs. Mm-hmm. There are about 1 million fewer black people working than who would otherwise be working if it weren't for illegal alien labor. And illegal alien labor, according to a study done by the Civil Rights Commission, puts downward pressure to the tune of almost $2,000 per year on the salaries of black people living in the inner city. And Donald Trump gave us the most secure border we ever had. He also supported school choice. He also did the First Step Act, which allowed about 5,000 mostly black men with long criminal sentences, nonviolent, to have their sentences reduced an average of 70 months per. He pardoned Jack Johnson, the first black heavyweight champion. Even Barack Obama didn't do that.
Yeah,
he did an extraordinary job for black people.
I think you're innocent until proven guilty, but I feel like President Biden had 4 indictments, 91 criminal charges. President Obama had 4 indictments, 91 criminal charges. Y'all would be telling them that they need to step aside and they shouldn't be running for president.
Well, I wouldn't vote for Barack Obama or for Joe Biden in any case, no matter whether he had indictments or no indictments. I don't vote for tax spend, regulate liberals.
You're a conservative, right? Obviously.
No question.
What initially made you gravitate towards being a conservative?
I think it was my father. My father was a lifelong Republican, and my father always told my brothers and me the following. Democrats want to give you something for nothing. When you try and get something for nothing, you almost always end up getting nothing for something.
They're always trying to give you nothing for something for nothing. Meaning that at the end of the day, you might think you're reaping the benefit of something, but at the end of the day, you're not getting no benefit of it because the long-term effects of it is nothing. You're basically falling for something. That's like someone falling for something that's the instant gratification is something that they desire at that moment, but the long-term effects of it is not beneficial in the long run. It's just doing more damage and deteriorating the legacy that you can have, because at the end of the day, you're receiving nothing. You're doing nothing. You receive what you wanted, you get complacent, and that's what it is. You feel like you got what you wanted. It's not working towards nothing. You'll respect yourself just in general, and any person will respect themselves more and feel more appreciated for something they work towards than just getting handed something. But that's the people that actually genuinely works towards something and wants to make a difference.
And my dad, I told you about his background. He told my brothers and me that hard work wins. You get out of life what you put into it. You cannot control the outcome, Larry, but you are 100% in control of the effort. Before you moan or groan about what somebody did or said to you, go to the nearest mirror, look at it, and ask yourself, what could I have done to change the outcome? And finally, Charlemagne, my dad, told my brothers and me this. No matter how hard you work, how good you are, sooner or later, bad stuff is going to happen to you. How you deal with those bad things will tell your mother and me if we raised a man. I wrote a book about my father's life. It's called Dear Father, Dear Son, 2 Lives, 8 Hours. It's about an 8-hour conversation he and I had, where at the beginning of the conversation, I thought my dad was harsh. I thought he spanked us too often. We had a belt. In those days, from the South, you spank kids. And I thought my dad was way too harsh. And we had an 8-hour conversation, and by the time we ended, my dad got bigger and bigger and bigger, and Larry Elder got smaller and smaller and smaller, and I apologized to him. And it's a book that's changed a lot of people's lives. It's called, as I said, Dear Father, Dear Son, 2 Lives, 8 Hours. The paperback is called A Lot Like Me. Same book, but it's cheaper.
Can you honestly say this is the Republican Party that you grew up on? This modern-day GOP?
Yes. The Republican Party pretty much has always stood for low taxes, low regulation, peace through strength, not strength through peace, and strong borders, and still does. And when Donald Trump is gone, and he will be gone, even if he gets reelected, the day after he gets reelected, he's a lame duck, the party will still go on. The principles will still go on. However, I do believe that many people in our party have spent and spent and spent, so that Ronald Reagan, my favorite president, when he entered the Oval Office, Charlemagne, when he left, government was bigger. It got bigger under George Herbert Walker Bush. It got bigger under W. It got bigger under Donald Trump. And the only way to restrain spending is with an amendment to the Constitution to fix spending to a certain percentage of the GDP, with exception for war and for natural disaster. Otherwise, we're going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Let me use the word unsustainable. That's the word Barack Obama used to describe the so-called entitlements. Unsustainable was a word that Bill Clinton used to describe them. But nothing happens, because if you run claiming you're going to reform Social Security or Medicare, the other side is going to accuse you of not caring about the sick, the poor, the elderly, and you are going to lose elections. That's why government gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So we need a law to restrain spending. Otherwise, it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And for young people like you, these programs are not going to be there.
Mr. Elder, I know a lot of black conservatives.
That is true, man. I'm 24 years old. By the time I retire, Social Security, by the time I get old, Social Security probably ain't even gonna be there, man.
And I completely agree about the black family. I don't think anybody here objects to that.
Don't disagree about that at all.
I think when you talk about ideology and then you mix in parties and then personalities, it gets kind of confusing. And, you mentioned yourself not to moan and groan, that as long as you work hard, all is well. And I think where the conflict is coming in is you did moan and groan about how the Republicans treated you. You did moan and groan about Governor Newsom and, asking for a recall. You did not leave that up to the voters. You are moaning and groaning when it comes to Donald Trump and how he's being treated. So it just seems to be a hypocrisy. And I don't know if the message would land a little bit better if there was some fairness across the board on Democrats and Republicans. I'm an independent, by the way, and I think both parties are trash. And I think all of us here, see both sides. And that's the part that's just not landing for me. There seems to be an unfairness on both sides with you.
Well, not too surprisingly, I don't agree with your analysis. How is it that I did not leave the recall to the voters? What do you mean by that?
What do you?
You said I didn't leave the recall to the voters.
No. I said you moaned and groaned about it. You said it should be recalled, correct? Correct?
I said Gavin Newsom should have been recalled, yes.
Right, that's moaning and groaning.
Well, actually, it's taking advantage of what's in the California Constitution, which is when a certain percentage of voters sign a petition to recall a politician, there can be a recall vote, and there was one, as there was in 2003. We recalled the governor then, and there was in 2021 when I attempted to recall Gavin Newsom. That's part of our democratic process in California.
Absolutely. We agree with that. I'm going to your statement when you said rather than moan about it. A little while ago, you said rather than moan about it, I'm just going to keep doing the hard work. And so I'm just saying that technically is moaning about it because the governor's the that's my point, sir.
On a legal process and then working effectively by taking action and putting in your effort has nothing to do with moaning and groaning. But okay,
I don't follow exactly what you're saying. I really don't.
It's okay. I didn't expect you to.
Yeah,
but it's
I'm
one moment.
I'm a little slow sometimes.
One moment, yeah, we get it.
Yeah.
One moment you're complaining about the system, and the next minute you're saying the system is fair. The next minute you're saying it's not fair. So that's what I'm saying. There just seems to be a double standard on you and the system, not wanting to be accountable for a system that black people are not in charge of, by the way, of not wanting to hold both sides accountable when it comes to the system.
Do I believe Hillary was treated differently and Joe Biden treated differently than Donald Trump is being treated? Yes, I do. Is that an indictment about whether or not America is systemically racist? No, it is not. Those are
they're two totally different things.
Yes,
you're
yes, they
trying
are.
to merge the two, but they're two totally different things.
I agree with you. They're two different things. No, we're agreeing. We're agreeing. They're two different things. We're agreeing.
No, we're agreeing to two different things. We're not agreeing that there's not systematic racism because we're not in charge of the system, sir. In case you
all right. Can we?
Black people have never been in charge of any system. We're not
actually we have been. Take Baltimore.
No, we've never been in charge of any system.
May I finish?
Tell me, what financial system are black people in charge of? What healthcare system are black people in charge of? What government system are black people in charge of?
I'm about ready to tell you.
What prison system are black people in charge?
I'm about ready to tell you.
I'm not talking about mayors. I already know that talking point, sir. I go on Fox News all.
She's so angry, yeah. It's not even funny.
Time as well. So let's not go there with that. I said, what system have we created?
Goodness.
Have we implemented that we have been in charge of? Name one.
Is this why you don't like talking to black women, Larry Elder?
Wow. Baltimore. Freddie Gray a few years ago.
No. That's mayors. I'm not talking. I said system.
I'm going to tell you about this system if you allow me to finish my point.
I'm not talking about somebody elected and doing a job, sir. I asked what system did we create? What financial system?
Okay, let's talk about the system of one of the largest.
Thank you.
One of the systems of one of the largest cities in America, Baltimore. Freddie Gray died in police custody a few years ago. The mayor was black. The head of the police department was black. Number two.
It's not in charge of the system, but go ahead.
Number two person in charge of the police department was black. All of city council, Democrats, majority black.
Still not in charge of the system.
Wow.
That's a position.
6 officers charged, 3 of them were black. A judge before whom 2 of the officers tried their case, found him not guilty, was black.
Still not in charge of the system.
The city.
All legal processing. Legal processing will for those who are in charge. And the only way those things can take place or a verdict can take place by those who are conducting the system.
Intendant of public schools was black. The county superintendent of public schools was black. The attorney general at the time, Loretta Lynch.
Remember, reverting back to what I said, the superintendent has more power than the mayor, right? So now he's going, you get where he's going with this, right? But she's trying to say things to constantly derail his point because she just asking questions and speak in general, and he's giving detail and context to substantiate his argument, and she doesn't like that.
She's black, as was the president of the United States was black, and yet
still not in charge of the system.
So who's in charge of the system?
Well, Wanda Sykes said when Barack Obama got elected, "How are you going to complain about the man when you are the man?" Now, from the president to the attorney general to the state attorney to the mayor to the head of the police department to the commissions of the schools in the city and in the county to the majority of city council in that city, all of them are black. And you're still saying that we don't run anything?
So who's in charge of the
No,
system,
no,
Ted?
I said who created it.
Yeah, tell them again, man. And we still saying we don't run anything.
The system. I didn't say we didn't run anything.
System is created by positions that's then gathered together to make logical reasons, and those who we vote in creates that system, which then legally represents who we vote for.
I challenge a lot of those black leaders, by the way. I said when we talk about the system, what black people have been
She challenges a lot of the leaders, black leaders, so to say. But she's saying that they don't conduct the system, but she's challenged them for what reason? Because they're in control of the system, right?
Charge of any system. I'm not talking about a position. I'm not talking about a mayor. You know good and well what I'm talking about.
You're basically saying that they're black faces that are still in those
Correct.
positions, but they're still being
correct.
part
Similar
of the
to you,
system.
Mr. Elder. You're a black face in a position in the conservative movement. They're just the same. They're just on the other side. I'm talking about
So then when Martin Luther King said in 1966, I believe there could be a black president in about 40 years' time, then it really doesn't matter whether there's one or isn't. One, because nothing changes. He was naive.
The
He was
system
naive
also
then.
killed him as well. Well, we know that the FBI and the CIA also killed him. That system. You realize that, correct?
Wow. An individual killed him.
Right. That was also a part of Pro Hotel through the system. Correct?
Yeah.
Not correct.
Pro.
Not correct. He was
so
killed.
The FBI didn't have anything to do with it. The CIA didn't have anything to do with
J.
it.
Edgar Hoover was definitely on Martin's ass. Like, come on.
I didn't say he wasn't.
Oh.
Robert Kennedy is the one that approved the wiretaps. But to say that the FBI killed him, I mean, what's your evidence of that? That's a pretty serious charge.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Pretty serious charge.
Yeah.
Serious charge requires serious evidence.
Yeah.
What is your enforcement law proposal?
It is to allow states to set up commissions of retired judges and retired DAs to get rid of these soft on crime George Soros-backed DAs that are allowing a bunch of bad people on the streets or not charging bad people to the full extent of the law. And the people that, by and large, that are hurt by these people are the very black and brown people living in the inner city.
Mm.
There's a Larry Krasner is a George Soros-backed DA in Philadelphia. He's been impeached, but this Philadelphia State Senate wouldn't even take up the case. We've had 2 attempts to repeal a soft on crime DA in L.A. County, and it hasn't gone through yet. We've got a bunch of, in my opinion, this guy, Alvin Bragg, he ran promising to get Donald Trump. And when he got in, he said the evidence wasn't there. And then one of the former DAs writes a book, accuses Bragg of giving Donald Trump a pass. And all of a sudden, he brings counts against Donald Trump. I think it's unfair.
Do you think members of your party are leaning toward fascism?
Define fascism.
Authoritarianism?
Define fascism.
I mean, the rejection of democracy, the rule of law, and equal rights under the law in favor of a strong man, Donald Trump, who interprets the popular will.
No, I don't. There was a long article about Barack Obama by one of my mentors. His name is Thomas Sowell. He's an economist, he's a black conservative, still alive, around 95 years old. And he wrote a piece in which he said a lot of people call people like Barack Obama socialist. Socialism is government ownership of the means of production. Mm-hmm. Fascism is when the government allows you to own means of production, but government tells you what to do. And he said, frankly, technically, people like Barack Obama are fascists. That is to say, these are left-wing people telling you how to run your business, telling you what to sell, telling you what you can't sell. For example, in California, we have a governor named Gavin Newsom who recently said by the year 2035, no more sale of new gas-powered cars. How dare you? Most people don't want an EV. They like their own gasoline-powered cars, but now you're telling car dealerships they can't even sell them? What do you call that?
But what about...
Let's run it back. Socialism.
How dare you? The government tells you what. About Barack Obama by one of my mentors. His name is Thomas Sowell. He's an economist, he's a black conservative, still alive, around 95 years old. And he wrote a piece in which he said a lot of people call people like Barack Obama socialist. Socialism is government ownership of the means of production.
Mm-hmm. Government ownership of the means of production.
Fascism is when the government allows you to own means of production, but government tells you what to do. And he said, frankly, technically, people like Barack Obama are fascists. That is to say, these are left-wing people telling you how to run your business, telling you what to sell, telling you what you can't sell. For example, in California, we have a governor named Gavin Newsom who recently said by the year 2035, no more sale of new gas-powered cars. How dare you? Most people don't want an EV. They like their own gasoline-powered cars, but now you're telling car dealerships they can't even sell them? What do you call that?
But what about, when you tell women what to do with their bodies?
Well, that is a moral issue. I happen to be pro-life, and I believe that that abortion is a sin. That's not telling women what to do with their body. That's expressing my opinion about whether or not it is right or it is wrong. For example, there is a guy right now behind bars in Philadelphia named Dr. Kermit Gosnell. Mm-hmm. He is an abortion doctor who performed late-term abortions. When I ask people who consider my position to be extreme, I ask them, tell me at what point do you believe pregnancy has gone so far that to terminate the unborn would be homicide? And almost nobody will give you an answer. So in other words, what you're really telling me then is this guy, Dr. Kermit Gosnell, should be set free. He's a political prisoner. He was persecuted unfairly. If you won't tell me when you think at what point a pregnancy cannot be terminated unless it's homicide, then to me you're essentially allowing women to kill the unborn, no matter how old that unborn is. And I think that's wrong. The other thing, Charlamagne, real quickly on this issue, it'd be one thing if the pro-life community was not talking the talk and walking the walk. But there are literally thousands of pregnancy centers all over America, whether it's funding for adoption services, funding for housing, funding for education, funding for job training, to let women know they have alternatives. And every state will decide this. The government shouldn't be passing some sort of law one way or the other regarding abortion. Every state's going to decide that. I'm in California, which is a deep blue state. There have been 2 initiatives to restrict abortion. I voted in favor of them. I was overwhelmingly defeated. And when abortion has been put on the ballot in recent years, the people that wanted abortion restrictions have lost. Mm-hmm. The American people pretty much have said, first-term abortions, they want them to be legal. Late-term abortions, they don't want them to be legal. I happen to disagree with that, but I'm willing to live in a society that has a different point of view than I have on this issue.
Can you have a real democracy if you're taking away people's power of choice? If you're taking away people's power to choose and not giving them any options.
Well, if you consider it to be a crime that abortion is a sin, in my opinion, you're not taking people the right to choose. You're making a moral statement about what's right and what's wrong.
I mean, there's a lot of sins, though. Sex before marriage is a sin. I'm sure you did some of that.
As for the sins of my past, either the Lord has forgiven me or the statute of limitations has run out. I'm making a joke about that. A lot of people, of course, make mistakes, yes. Okay. And I think that people should deal with the consequences of their actions. And if you let people know their
consequences. What's wrong with that, man? Whatever decisions you make, it's consequences behind the actions, but you stand behind that, right?
Consequences to their actions, it will inform their actions and make them behave more responsibly. Anytime you allow bad behavior to continue, you're going to get more bad behavior, whether that's...
So how does that apply to President Trump then? Because you said that was a 2-tier system that
because
that's unfair.
I don't believe Donald Trump...
You don't think he did anything?
I don't think he did anything wrong. No, I don't. I believe that he complained about the election the same way Hillary did. Hillary, for 4 years, referred to the 2016 election as having been stolen, her word, not mine. She called Donald Trump illegitimate, her word, not mine. Jay Johnson, who's Obama's DHS secretary, testified under oath that not a single vote tally was changed by the Russians. They tried, but they failed to change a single vote tally. 66% of Democrats believe the Russians changed vote tallies to get Donald Trump elected. Even though Jay Johnson testified under oath, not a single one was changed. That's the damage that people like Hillary and former President Jimmy Carter and Stacey Abrams and Hakeem Jeffries and others have said for years, referring to Donald Trump as illegitimate. A greater percentage of Democrats believe 2016 was stolen than we feel that way about 2020, but yet nobody calls them election deniers and nobody accuses them of undermining our republic. And they're not undermining our republic. They're complaining about an election. You have a right to do so.
I know you probably got to go. Have you ever heard of the term nigga wake-up call?
Oh, man. No, he didn't say it.
No.
It is an incident where a person of color forgets that they are of color and are reminded rather brutally by an unexpected act of racism. Have you ever had any of those?
Oh, brother.
I'm just asking. You think you've ever
had
one of those?
I'm acutely aware, Charlamagne, that I'm a black person, just as you are a black person. And when Joe Biden insulted you by saying, you ain't really black, we don't know whether or not you want to vote for me or vote for Donald Trump, it seems to me that should have been a wake-up call on your part.
Oh, tell him. That should have been a wake-up call on your part. Let's hold you accountable.
How dare this guy come in here and insult you, a black man, and tell you got to think a certain kind of way? I'm amazed that you weren't mad about that.
I'm not gonna say it upset me, just like I'm not letting you upset me. You know what I mean?
Oh, so now he's not amazed, but he's not gonna let it upset him the same way he's not gonna let Larry Elder accept him. But what does Larry Elder have to do with the situation in which factually have been spoken by the individual in which he voted for and vouches for? Because all he keeps talking about is against Donald Trump and this black and white thing, but now it's something that's in regards to someone who he voted for, who is still presently in office, about a situation that factually happened. Now he's deflecting it and downplaying it, saying that he's not letting it get to him. Okay.
I don't tend to get upset over things like
Well,
that. But what I did say,
well, you just not talk
about
a nigger wake-up call, and it seemed to me that should have been a wake-up call on your part to have a white guy come in here who also said, by the way, about Mitt Romney, because he didn't want to put more regulations on Wall Street, going to put y'all back in chains. And Joe Biden has lied for decades about his civil rights record, claiming that he desegregated movie theaters and restaurants in Wilmington, Delaware, when he didn't do any of that. He lied and said that he tried to visit Nelson Mandela during apartheid South Africa. He did not. And he came in here and told you aren't even black and let you think a certain kind of way. It seemed to me that should have been a nigga wake-up call for you, but it wasn't, apparently.
I mean, for the record, I'm not a Democrat or Republican.
I didn't say you were.
Oh, now he going about what he is and what party he represents. Now he's trying to make it known that he's independent. He never said he wasn't. We're staying on the task. We're staying on the subject and the objective that you said, have you ever heard of a wake-up call? And now he's asking you in regards of what took place factually. Why didn't you respond about this being a wake-up call, since you're asking me about am I aware of my color and am I aware of a wake-up call? But is it a wake-up call on your part? Because I'm taking action and running and actually know the legal process and the voting and know what's going on factually behind the data, facts, and statistics, and not just going on how I feel and generalizing everything.
Yeah, I think both.
I don't know what you are. I never even asked you about your party affiliation.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, but you are black. And to have a white guy come in here and tell you have to say think a certain kind of way, otherwise you, quote, ain't black. Wow.
How should I have replied to him, you think?
What I just now
how should he have replied to him? The deflection is crazy.
I said, how dare you insult me and tell me I think as a human being, let alone as a black person? I don't tell you how to think, Joe Biden. How dare you come in here and tell me how I should think? I'm going to vote for Donald Trump if I want to vote for Donald Trump. And if I want to vote for Donald Trump, it does not make me not black. 20% of black people, black men, as I said, voted for Donald Trump in 2020. Are they not black now? So only 80% of black men walking around are really black, 20% are not because they voted for Donald Trump. How insulting is that? How condescending is that?
I mean, you're probably right, but I didn't take it in that way.
Well, I did.
As I said to him in that moment.
So what way did you take it? I'm curious.
But, it's just about me wanting something for my people, and I want to know what is he going to do for my people, and not only for my people now. How are you going to atone for the things you've done?
What he want from your people? What he want for your people? But not the perspective on what's taking place on how he see your people. That's what Larry Elder is saying. The things that are being voted for the simple fact to discourage people from actually doing hard work, and then the things that are being taken place to incentivize broken families and not a nuclear family being taken place.
To my people.
Right.
That's it.
Right. And this is a guy, Joe Biden, who, when he first got into the Senate, hung out with segregationists, talked about how well he got along with them, talked about how he didn't want integration because of a jungle. This guy has made all sorts of insulting things to black people, and his policies right now are hurting black people. Inflation hurts the people at the bottom more than anything else.
Exactly. Inflation hurts the people at the bottom. And to the point, there's no such thing as middle class. You're either at the bottom or you're either at the top, unfortunately. There's no such thing as middle class anymore.
Letting a bunch of illegal aliens into the border are hurting black people more than anybody else, as I said earlier. He's opposed to school choice when he has his own kids in private school. And we lost a year, almost 2 years of in-school education in California because of COVID that he supported. I mean, this guy has done monstrous things to black people, and then for him to come in here and tell you how you ought to think as a black person, it blew my mind.
As a person objectively who doesn't care about either party, when I just take a step back and I just look at everything that's happening, I see one party that seems still committed to democracy somewhat, and one party who's headed fast towards fascism. That's just my personal opinion. So who do you think I would vote for?
Well, let's talk about fascism, since I assume you're talking about election denying. In 2000, when George W. Bush won the election over Al Gore, the Democrats, the first week of January 2001, tried to overturn the results in Florida. 2004, George W. Bush gets reelected. Democrats, including Benny Thompson, the chair of the January 6th Committee, Jamie Raskin, a member of the January 6th Committee, joined with 28 other House Democrats and Senator Barbara Boxer to overturn the results in Ohio, claiming without any evidence that the Debo voting machine had been hacked. 2016, January 2017, Democrats challenged more states trying to get the election overturned that elected Donald Trump. Then Donald Trump challenged the first week of January in 2021. Nobody accused them of undermining our republic. Nobody accused them of being fascists. They exercised whatever means they could to try to win the election. I want to remind you that Hillary Clinton advised Joe Biden during the 2020 election, if it is a close election, quote, do not concede under any circumstances, close quote. Donald Trump used whatever legal means he could, advancing some novel legal theories to try to stay in office, and he failed. But I don't blame him for trying.
Yeah, but it's not just election denying. It's the disdain of women and fear of non-standard gender identities and sexual orientation.
Disdain for women.
It's the galvanizing of popular rage against cultural elites. It's nationalism based on dominant, superior race and historic bloodlines. Like, there's a lot of things that Republicans are doing.
Well, what about Joe Biden going to Howard University as he did recently, giving a commencement speech, Charlemagne, and he said the number one threat to the homeland was white supremacy. Really?
The FBI said that.
The Anti-Defamation League keeps track of how many people are killed by extremists, no matter the race of the extremists, every year. Last year, there were 25. As I said, in 2020, there were 11,000 blacks who were murdered, almost all murdered by other people, not murdered by white extremists. It's a lie to say white extremists is a big problem in America. It's a lie. It's what Democrats do to get black people angry.
The FBI said that.
It's what Democrats.
Fine.
I don't agree with that. The number one threat to the homeland is a large number of people who are engaging in criminal activity.
Exactly. But you're going to say what you're going to say for what the individuals want to hear, so then you gain their interest and also their vote, so then stay in office. But I'm going to leave that right there, family. I think we reacted to enough of this. A lot said. Larry Elder definitely came prepared, did his thing. I hope you guys enjoyed this reaction video. If you're new to the channel, come join the family. Hit that subscribe button, turn your post notifications on. Comment down below any legendary top of the reaction videos you guys want to see. And get this video a big thumbs up, man. Subscribe to the YouTube algorithm. It's totally free. And let the love supersede the hate, family. On that note, peace.